Imagine being 5 years old and your mother sits you down and begins wrapping coils of brass around your neck. Not as punishment, not by accident, but as one of the greatest gifts she believes she can give you. A gift of beauty, a gift of identity, a gift that says you belong to us and we are proud of you. This is the story of the Kayan women, a small ethnic group from the highlands of Myanmar, some of whom now live as refugees in the northern Thailand. And for the centuries, the women of this community have practiced one of the most visually striking and deeply misunderstood tradition in the entire world, neck elongation using brass coils. Today, we are going to go deep into this tradition, who these people are, where they came from, why they do this, and what actually does to the body, and what the women themselves say about it. Because if there is one thing I want you to take away from this video, it is that this is far more complicated, far more beautiful, and far more human than the tourist snapshots suggest. First thing first, let us talk about who these people actually are, because they are almost always mislabeled. You have probably seen them referred to as the Padaung, but Padang is actually an outsider term, a shan word that many within the community find reductive. The people themselves prefer Kayan, which is the name of their own ethnic subgroup. The Kayan are part of the broader Kayan Lawi ethnic group, which itself falls under the larger Karen people of Southeast Asia. They are a Tibeto-Burman group with a history that stretches back centuries in the mountainous borderlands between what is now Myanmar, formerly Burma, and Thailand. Historically, they lived in the Kayan state in eastern Myanmar, farming the highlands, maintaining their own language, their own spiritual traditions, and their own deeply distinct visual identity. But beginning in the late 1980s and through the 1990s, military conflict in Myanmar, particularly the brutal campaigns by the Burmese military against ethnic minority groups, drove tens of thousands of Karen and Kayan people across the border into Thailand, where many have lived in refugee villages ever since. Today, some of the most well-known Kayan communities are in villages near Mai Hong San in the northern Thailand, and it is here that the brass coil tradition has become both a source of cultural pride and, as we will get into, a source of significant tension within the outside world. Now, let us talk about the coils themselves, because there is a lot of misinformation floating around and I want to give you the actual facts. The process typically begins when a girl is around 5 years old, though the exact age can vary. A single coil of brass is wrapped around the neck, not tight enough to cause immediate pain, but firm enough to begin exerting gentle pressure over time. As the girl grows, additional coils are added, usually in stages every few years. By the time a woman reaches adulthood, she may be wearing anywhere from 15 to 25 individual rings, with the total weight of the bra sometimes reaching up to 5 kilograms. That is around 11 pounds. Now, here is where it gets really interesting from a biological standpoint. Despite what many people assume, the neck itself is not actually being elongated. The bones of the neck, the cervical vertebra, do not stretch. What actually happens is that the weight of the coil gradually pushes the collarbone and the upper ribs downward, which creates the visual illusion of a dramatically longer neck. It is the shoulders being depressed, not the neck being stretched. The muscles of the neck do weaken over time due to the constant support provided by the coils, which means that women who have worn them for many years may find it uncomfortable or even difficult to fully support their head without the rings. But studies and medical examinations of Kayan women have found no evidence of the kind of severe anatomical damage that outside observers sometimes assume must be occurring. The process is gradual and the body adapts. The coils are not permanently fixed. they can be removed, and contrary to the old myth that removing them will cause a woman's neck to collapse and suffocate her, that is simply not true. Women do remove their coils for various reasons, and they are able to do so safely, though the process of readjustment can be physically uncomfortable. This is where it gets genuinely fascinating because nobody agrees on a single origin story. There are multiple explanations that have been passed down through generations, and honestly, all of them together paint a richer picture than any of them alone. One of the most widely cited explanations is purely aesthetics, that within Kayan culture, a long neck has traditionally been considered the pinnacle of feminine beauty. The coils were a way of cultivating and displaying that beauty, signaling a woman's status, her eligibility, and the prosperity of her family. In a culture where visual identity carries enormous social weight, wearing the coil was mark of distinction. A second explanation is spiritual and protective. Some accounts suggest the coils were originally intended to protect women from the tiger bites, the brass guarding the throat. Others link the long neck to the Kayan creation mythology, in which the community traces its origin to a dragon mother. The elongated neck, in this reading, is a way of honoring and embodying that ancestral connection. The third explanation, one that appears in some historical account, is that coils were originally a way of making the Kayan women less attractive to raiders from neighboring groups who might try to abduct them. The thinking being that women who looked visually distinct and whose necks were encased in heavy brass would be likely to be taken as slaves or wives by outsiders. Whether this was the original intent or a later rationalization is debated by the anthropologists. What is clear, regardless of which origin story you find most compelling, is that over time, the coils became something that transcended any single explanation. They became identity itself. They became the visual signature of what it means to be a Kayan woman. They became, for those who wear them, deeply personal. And people will be actually asking themselves, what do the women say? This is the part of the story that I think gets lost most often in the global conversations about this tradition. The actual voice of the women themselves. Because when journalists and researchers have sat down with Kayan women and asked them directly how they feel about wearing the coils, the answers are almost never what outsiders expect. Many women describe wearing the coils as a source of immense pride. It connects them to their mothers, their grandmothers, their grandmothers. It is a living link to a culture that has faced enormous pressure from colonialism, from military violence, from displacement, and has survived. To wear the coils is to say, we are still here. We have not been erased. Younger women within the community have increasingly diverse views. Some choose to continue the tradition enthusiastically. Others have chosen not to wear the coils, particularly those who have grown up in Thailand and have had more exposure to outside cultures and education systems. And critically, in most communities today, these choices is genuinely theirs to make. The tradition is no longer universally compulsory, even within families that have practiced it for generations. What many Kayan women consistently push back against, however, is the framing that they are victims of their own culture. When tourists visit their villages and stare at them with expressions of pity or horror, the women notice. When international media covers their tradition purely through the lens of the oppression or body modification shock value, the women notices that too. Many of them find it deeply frustrating to have their identity reduced to a single image, the long neck, with no curiosity about who they actually are, what their language sounds like, and what their food tastes like. what their dreams are. We cannot talk about the Kayan without talking about tourism, because it has become one of the most complicated dimensions of their modern reality. Since the 1980s and the 1990s, the villages where Kayan refugee lives in northern Thailand have become major tourist attractions. Tour operators in Chiang Mai and Mai Hong Son advertise visits to see the long neck women, sometimes using languages that is uncomfortably close to describing a human zoo. Tourists pay entrance fee to walk through the villages, take photographs, and purchase handcrafts. The economic reality is real and significant. For communities living as stateless refugees with limited rights to work or travel freely in Thailand, the income from tourism has been genuinely important for survival. Some families have been able to build better homes, feed their children, and maintain a degree of stability in an otherwise extremely precarious situations precisely because of the tourist income. But the ethical questions are equally real. Human rights organizations have raised concerns about whether the tourist economy creates a perverse incentive, one where the Kayan girls face pressure to wear the coils, not because their community wants to maintain the tradition for its own sake, but because their family's income depends on tourists coming to photograph them. Whether that pressure is decisive or marginal varies from village to village and family to family, and it is genuinely difficult to generalize. What is certain is that the Kayan people themselves have agency in these conversations, and increasingly, their own voices are pushing for a more respectful, more dignified form of cultural exchange, not a zoo, but a spectacle, but an actual encounter between human beings. So, in today's world, the Kayan community is at crossroads that reflects the broader crossroads facing countless indigenous and ethnic minority groups around the world. How do you maintain a living tradition in a world that has fundamentally changed around you? How do you pass on what matters most to your children when your children are growing up between two cultures, two countries, two sets of expectations? Some Kayan families have been able to return to Myanmar as the political situation has shifted. Though the ongoing military coup of 2021 and the subsequent civil war have made the return deeply uncertain and dangerous for many. Others have received refugee resettlement to third countries including Finland, New Zealand, and the US, where they are building new lives while trying to carry their culture with them. The brass coils travels with them, in living rooms in Minnesota and the highland villages in Thailand and in towns in Kaya state, where there are Kayan women who wake up every morning and feel the family weight of the brass around their necks, and who feel in that weight something that no amount of distance or displacement can take from them. So the Kayan tradition of neck elongation is one of those things that is very easy to reduce to a single image, a photograph, a viral post, a 2-second reaction of wonder of discomfort. But like every human tradition, like every practice that has been passed from mother to daughter across centuries, it is up close something far more layered and far more moving than the image it suggests. It is about beauty, yes, but it is also about belonging, about survival, about a people who have faced extraordinary pressure to disappear and have chosen, in their own way and on their own terms, not to. The next time you see a photograph of a Kayan woman, the brass catching the light, her posture straight and dignified, I hope you see not an oddity, not a spectacle, but a person carrying the full weight of her history, quite literally, and choosing to do so with grace. That is the story of the golden-necked women of the Kayan, and it is one worth knowing.